Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kathleen Rogers, and welcome. Very happy to have you, and very happy to have our online audience. As many of you know, this is the only official side event on climate education, and so we're here on an important moment, charting a path to where we all want to be on what we believe is one of the weakest points of the environmental community and of the climate crisis. I had a meeting a short while ago with the Permanent Secretary of Climate, Tourism, and Hospitality for Zimbabwe, and he said in the conversation about climate literacy, we're only as strong as the weakest link. And many of us in this audience and online around the world believe that the failure of countries to educate their citizens and make them climate literate, to teach civic skills and create job training for the future and present green economy is the weakest link, both in the climate agreement and in the environmental community writ large. I am really pleased to have two very stunning people with me, people who are really committed to climate literacy. The first is Haldis Holst, the Deputy General Secretary of Education International. And by way of introduction, Education International represents over 32 million teachers around the world. It's an extraordinary organization that has become a very important force behind climate literacy. And I'm very pleased as well to introduce Aisha Maduka, Director, Strategic Initiatives and Partnership Development and CEO's Office of the Qatar Foundation. I'm going to turn it over first to Haldis, and she can talk about their campaign, which is similar in a way, although they have such a huge number of people, to what Earth Day is trying to do. We have a climate literacy petition, which is now, thanks to many people in this room and to Education International and to unions, we have almost 400+ million people signed on to a petition calling governments to both in the Paris Agreement and generally to commit to mandatory assessed climate literacy, civic skill building, and jobs training. So, Haldis, take it away.
Well, thanks a lot, Kathleen, and thank you for inviting us to this event. It's a bit stunning for me and a bit dangerous to speak on behalf of the teaching profession, but I believe that's what I'm doing. Because as you said, if we count down to individuals, we have 32 million members, the teachers and education support personnel. And we've been around for a while. And although we have a climate campaign going right now, this has actually been a topic as long as I've been engaged in this movement, as long as I've been a teacher, and I'm pushing retirement. We also know that we have many members that have been trying to put it on a political agenda, climate education, and that have been trying to make a difference in the classroom all their working life. And we've had resolutions at our World Congress. We have a World Congress every 4 years, calling us that it's about time that we make sure that all children take part in climate change education, that they're equipped for the future. And we've tried. But we admit we haven't been able to reform the world. And teachers want this. That's why they come to us and ask us, please help us make this reality. Because you cannot achieve climate change education that is to lead to climate literacy if it's not systemic. It cannot be the basis of individual activists. It has to be mandated by the governments who create the curriculum, who give the mandate to the teachers to teach the children in their countries. We committed then 2 years ago at COP25 to continue to take action and to up it. And then we saw COP26 coming and saying now is the time. So at our executive board meeting in April, we launched our Teach for the Planet campaign. We said now is the time to tell everyone and to get the ministers to pledge at COP26 that yes, we commit that if we all haven't already done it, we will reform our curriculums. We will make sure that our teachers are trained so they are able to teach their students. They need to do it now. The unrestness of teachers, the feeling that they cannot deliver to their students. When you hear the students' voices, we saw the Fridays for Futures. I saw the young people marching outside my office in Brussels. I heard them interviewed on television, whether it was at home in Norway or in other countries, saying, you know what, we're scared for our future. We need to be empowered so we can deal with our future. You hear from students in the South Pacific that say, our land is disappearing because of actions of other parts of the world. We cannot live with, as educators, that our students are scared, that our students don't feel that they have the tools to deal with the future, to create their own lives, and to create change. The thing we can do through education is to give them the tools for the future, and then we have to make people responsible today to take the necessary action to create that future that they can further develop in the right direction, whether it's jobs, whether it's their free time, how they want to live, how they want to spend their lives. So that is the commitment that lies at the bottom. In the manifesto, that was a clear call to action. We define what is quality climate change education. What does it mean based on science, that it is credible, and also we define and put the demands forward that you have to make the teachers able to teach it properly. Because I'll be honest, I was not trained in this when I was trained as a teacher. We must make sure that we fill those gaps so that the partnership between the knowledge of the teachers and what the students want to learn to be able to live their lives can meet each other in a classroom or outside the classroom, because this is a great topic, my friends, to teach and to learn outside the classroom, so that you can be more hands-on where society is changing, and you can see the effects, and you can feel them, and you can start making a difference towards a better future. So that's sort of where our engagement comes from. It comes from our professional members that say, hey, this is the job we want to do. Support us, mandate us, and make it possible for us to do it properly for the young people growing up.
Thank you. Before I turn to Aisha, what Haldis just said was pretty remarkable, because if you understand it, the teachers, the people who are educating our children, K through 12 and beyond, they're all calling for it. Yet at this COP, we're having an extraordinarily difficult time convincing ministers to include these commitments in their nationally determined commitments, to talk about it in depth, to be there and understand that the students and the teachers want this, and the only thing standing in the way are our governments. So it is important for all of us to recognize that one of the goals we all have here is to get those ministers to commit, but we aren't going to be waiting around. I think you said that earlier today. If it doesn't happen here, we'll be working every day in every country to make sure that they do it, so that in the very near future we have universal agreement that climate literacy is just as important as the other pieces of the Paris Agreement. So I'd love to turn it over to Aisha, who has done remarkable work on education, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
And thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm so excited to be here and speak on behalf of the Qatar Foundation. I've been in the foundation for the past 3 years, and before that I was one of the people who started the first mixed incubation center in Qatar. So I'm very excited to also talk about my background when it comes to education and also youth empowerment and entrepreneurship. At the Qatar Foundation, we focus on really on education when it comes to K-12. We have different schools across the foundation, different types of schools, from STEM schools to innovative schools and different types of schools. We also focus on higher education, where we have 6 partner universities that come internationally and have campuses in Qatar, where we have different programs, as well as our homegrown university, Hamad bin Khalifa University. We also focus a lot on research, development, and innovation. And there are areas that are also within the topic of today. So when it comes to climate literacy education in the schools, I think there are, from our angles, or the different angles to tackle, and there are 3 things that we really work on, which is science and entrepreneurship skills, where we really focus from the beginning on experiential learning and thinking about, problem solving, critical thinking, and that gives the students exposure to finding the right solutions, whatever challenge it is. And when it comes to climate literacy, we've seen it through our students. My daughter actually goes to one of the schools there, and she just turned 8 on Monday, and her favorite topic is worms, and through that she learned how to build compost and educate us in the house on the right ways of doing things. So I think it's very important that with that kind of literacy or with that kind of experiential learning and problem solving and critical thinking, they also have the empowerment to speak and have the right voices to talk about their beliefs and their thoughts. And we do that through our different platforms. We have the Doha debates and Qatar debates, and they're great debates where students have the chance to talk about their passion and what they really want the change to happen. And we've done that at the pre-COP with you guys as well. And it was in Milan and through the Youth for Climate event where we've had amazing students who were there and talked about their passion, and they've developed a manifesto to talk about what do we want for the future. And they're here also today to basically to share with us in the Qatar Pavilion their thoughts and their beliefs. And it's a cross-cultural session where they will be talking about their future and what they want for their future with our students and the students of the University of Edinburgh. So we're very excited about that session. And I think the third angle I'd like to tackle is policy and research. I think that's also very important, where students need to be exposed, not just at the university, but also earlier than that. And I'm happy to say that Qatar Foundation does that from different angles when it comes to research and policy. And we have the Qatar National Research Fund, where they have competitions in science and research every year, and the students participate in them, and they are engaged in this topic from an early age. So I think it's very important to, these 3 points, to tackle them from a very early stage so that they have the right voice, the right platform, and the right to have the right dialogue in different ways, whether it's locally or globally.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions that were developed by youth activists and others I'd like to ask both of you. The first for you, Aisha, is what would you say are the building blocks of an effective climate literacy education?
I think, as I mentioned just a little bit, I think it's important to give them the tools of the skills that they need. Yes, literacy is important, and we're looking at a few different things. From Qatar Foundation's perspective is to look at what are the local challenges rather than how to address local challenges globally, and how can we really relate to some of our challenges. We come from a very dry city and extremely hot city, and so when we look at local challenges and we know how to address them globally, I think that's one point. I think also what is beneficial from our stake is that we have that journey from K to 12 all the way to postgraduate program, where we can guide them in the way they want. If they want to start their own business, they have the platform at the Qatar Science Technology Park, where they have where we know where to guide them in different areas, and look at the different examples that they have. When it comes to higher education, policy and research is a very important topic to tackle into, and to look at how can we, how can the students benefit from the exposures of these different things. To be in an education city where there are different angles, it gives us different opportunities to solve in different ways where the students would be passionate about.
And I have a question for both of you, and this is one of my favorite areas. I'm in the course of being engaged in climate literacy and building Earth Day's global campaign, which again, over 400 million people have signed on to. I've been convinced through these conversations with national leaders, youth, and others that countries that are not engaged in educating their populations, whether it's the general public or their K through 12 students and universities, will be left behind in the green economy. We've seen it in the tech world, where a handful of companies own it. And unlike technology, which sort of fits into that capacity of an organization or a company to own big chunks of it, energy and going green in a country is very local. And so there's no reason why the largest tech companies in the world need to own the global South's infrastructure, their ways of protecting and creating jobs, or building solar panels. So I'd like to ask both of you, what connection do you see between, I'll call it green jobs, although that term's a little bit out of favor, the green economy and climate literacy. How do you see yourselves and others being able to build an equitable country-by-country process for educating people? Haldis, would you like to go first?
That is a question, Kathleen, I think you can answer from different perspectives.
Sure.
You know, I can start with the most obvious one. We say that where you at the end prepare for jobs is through vocational education and training. And it's about building a system that actually trains young people to relevant jobs for the future, given we believe that we are going to change the future, and we must believe in that. And that means that you have to train them for vocational jobs in the green economy. Like a country like mine, you don't train them to work in the oil industry. You train them to work in the clean energy production, so that you're preparing them, so that you don't go into make the mistake of training young people, educating them for jobs that no longer exist. I think that is really the worst thing we can do, and that's always being one step ahead. You never can be able to be ahead of them. You're always a little bit behind, but you have to be in the right direction. So it's creating, whether it's vocational or academic strands, that they are in line with the vision of the society we want. So you have to build the knowledge. But you can also see from it that it's the holistic view of what education is that prepares you for a green society and also for a green economy. Because if this isn't something that is embedded in your view of how you are as a citizen, you are not going to continue to act and change that society in the direction you want. And that's why I strongly believe that you cannot capsule in climate change education into one subject or one topic that you deal with in a little project or, you know, an hour a week. This is cross-cutting. This is about an attitude, a value that needs to trickle into everything you do through your education. It is about being relevant for which society you are going to live as a human being. So I think it's both specific, that you educate your children for what you think are the jobs that are going to be there, and we need to put pressure on what kind of jobs they define that as, and it's preparing your general view of life and your values.
And for Earth Day, that's sort of the perfect answer, because we believe in education for education's sake. We believe in building a green consumer market. We believe in values. So I think Haldis said it very correctly, but I also would love to hear your perspective from the Qatar Foundation, how you view both the prospect for climate literacy and sort of the point of doing it.
It just makes me think about something that Virginia Commonwealth University in Qatar have been working on, a fashion sustainability competition for their students. And the program is, it's in the direction of creating a program of, fashion sustainability in general. Like, this topic is important for the students themselves. So I think it's very important to give them the right platforms in general, like how can we engage them from a very early age, just to talk about it again. And I think when it comes to providing the right ecosystem, so the ecosystem comes from, yes, learning and education, but also providing the right skills that they need to create their own startups, and that they can also be part of the economy if they've created their own thing within their own passion that is within the topic of climate. Whether it's a social enterprise, whether it's a clean tech business, whether it's an ed tech business as well. So there are different ways to tackle it. We just need to provide them with the right platform. I think also another point is when we look at, and that's just my personal opinion, when you look at VC funding, the venture capitals, the angel investors should also look at startups that are, that have trade fair, ethically and environmentally friendly, and they have, solutions that will be for the future. And that's a very important topic to look into as well. Yeah.
Another component of the campaigns that we know of, the youth and others, have been focused on the importance of civic education. That means participating in government beyond voting. It means knowing how to request information, because so many of us believe that the worst of climate change will be visited on the poor. So I'd like to ask Haldis what you think, why is civic education important? How do we do it? how do we integrate that into climate literacy in possibly all subjects?
And I think that's sort of I started on that, I think, in my last answer, because for me, this is part of a view of a holistic education, that you are educating the whole human being, and that means that you're not educating them individual subjects. And for me, civic education, it has different names in different countries, not always defined as a subject, sometimes as transversal topic, sometimes hardly addressed at all. But in my mind, it should be addressed. And it's not just climate or civic education, but it's the whole concept of how do you become an active, responsible citizen in your society. You start with your local community or in your family, and then it's your neighborhood, and then you work out. And it's constantly having that dialogue with the student on how can you make a change based on where you are. And climate is part of that. It needs a separate knowledge to be able to base it on knowledge and science. But at the same time, it's part of your being an active citizen, and in that way, civic engagement.
Aisha, I'm going to ask them a couple more questions, and I'm going to turn to the audience. What are the innovative ways to finance climate literacy? We've run into this program. We have different views on whether countries and how much money they need, where they're going to get it, how much money is actually necessary. But it is a current hot topic of how do we finance this change and this move for climate literacy. What are some of the innovative ways you think we can do that?
I think it should start with the grassroots of building the skills and having the students exposed to different things, rather than saying, okay, this is exactly the curriculum that we need for this type of education system or so on. I think I really believe that if you give them the right skills and give them the exposure of different challenges, whether it's being a youth activist or being a climate activist, it's just they need the right skills to be able to debate to negotiators or debate in different platforms. I think, yes, to have that kind of skills and they're prepared with certain skills is very important. And the second thing is to expose them to different opportunities. They might not, even at a very early age as well. I really believe in that. I think when you expose them to things like, and I always bring that as an example from the foundation because of what I've seen and what I've experienced with the students that I've seen once they were exposed in different platforms. An example is Qatar Debates. Basically what they do is they debate with international students in Arabic language or English language, and Arabic language doesn't have to be their mother tongue language, but they teach them about debating and finding solutions instead of, having that conflict without finding the right resolution. So I think exposing them to platforms like, the Qatar Debates, the students today are exposed to the Thyman program, which is a program for the youth, and they, through that program, they have the right leadership skills. They feel that they are empowered to bring the right voice. So I think when we expose them to different platforms, it gives them the experience, but the opportunity to speak their mind and share what's right for the environment.
Thank you. So because I want to turn to the audience, but I did have one question, and that's the roadmap for all of this, Haldis. I know we've talked about it briefly, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'm sure the audience would, of how we're going to get there.
Yes. Well, I sort of started, I wish with a quick, easy answer to it. Unfortunately, it's not. Because these things, first of all, things take time, and we don't have time. That, I think, is sort of our great problem, so we have to break the speed limit. And for me, it's about connecting the dots. It's about connecting what actually is happening out there, whether it's in individual classrooms, or there are some countries that have tried to create change and to institutionalize and create good systems for climate change education or climate literacy. But then there are too many who have not, who are dashing away, who actually signed on to the Sustainable Development Goal number 4. Look at 4.7. If they can commit to that, they can pledge to climate literacy in their curriculum. So it's about pushing them to make their pledges so that when you go home at the national level, we can build that bridge or that road nationally saying, hey, you were out there, you committed. Now you need to say B when you said A. Now you need to make sure that your teachers are trained. Now you may need to make sure that the curriculum is revised. Now you make sure that the school buildings are green school buildings. You cannot just preach, you have to act. So I think we need to be that traffic police that makes sure that they act, that they don't stop at the side of the road and not drive to the end of it, but that we get all the small little roads where people are doing things connected into one main highway that goes in one direction. And the more people that are on that highway, the better we're going to make it to get to the end, and we don't want a traffic jam, only when we reach the end.
Thank you. I know that there are many people in the youth movement that are really concerned about this, and there are actually 4 or 5 different coalitions that are all working together, creating similar or in parallel commitments to working hard for climate literacy. And I'm going to recognize someone in the audience who's been working hard, Johnny Dombrowski. I know you have a question, and so he represents Fridays for the Future Education and has been working with many other youth groups. And I'd love to hear your question and your opinion about how the youth can play a role in what both of our speakers have been talking about, whether it's innovation or whether it's that hard work that has to be done at the country level to bring us all into alignment. And Johnny, by the way, is always very direct, so.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Kathleen. So, you know, last week I was in the Polish Parliament, and a lot of ministers spoke about the need for climate education and how they see it, and I think they don't really get our perspective, you know, because they think of climate education as recycling. They think of climate education as some very small individual changes, and as I see our perspective is that we have 2 goals till 2050. The goals that your generation has gave us. The first goal is to get the world carbon neutral by 2050, and the second goal is to preserve species and ecosystems from extinction. So I don't know if any generation before had such hard goals, to be honest. And so, you know, what we can do as the youth, we can advocate what we do. We suggest specific changes in the curricula. This is what we do in Poland, for example. We propose to our government to introduce climate education into every subject, as you said, not in one subject, in many subjects, to give to give schools the tools to cope with climate anxiety. So we have specific solutions, but you know, I'm in climate education for a year. I'm speaking to politicians, not only from Poland, from outside Poland, and they don't really get the point, which I think it was William Inge who said that the aim of education is in the knowledge, not about facts, but about values. And I feel that governments, they are really scared of climate education, because climate education is about a purpose, as you said. It is about values, because if you want to get the world climate neutral by 2050, you need to have values in yourself. And you need to educate people in order that they have these values, that they possess it. And governments, they don't want us to have values. I think they want for us to change our values every 4 years when the election comes. So I have a question to you, actually, because to the Education International.
Ah, perfect.
Because I'm in this for 1 year, you are in this for much longer time. So my question is very simple. What has worked with the governments? What has really worked so that we can follow? in our lobbying for climate education. I would like to know that. We will use that in our strategy. Because I'm here on COP26, we are attending ACE sessions, and to be polite, ACE is not working. So we are just looking for solutions. On Monday, we'll propose a declaration, maybe I will tell that later, to the governments. But I have a question to you, ma'am. What has worked in introducing climate education to schools? What has worked with governments? What has worked with teachers? Any platform? Like, what has really worked?
Thanks, and we only have a few minutes more because we have another panel after us, but I'd love to have an answer. No, take your time, and then we'll
No,
finish up.
I'm not going to take a lot of time. I think it's, thank you very much for the question. I don't think there is a simple answer. I think the best recipe is in the countries where you are so lucky that you either have a minister of education or a prime minister, president, or someone in office who actually understands what it is about and who pushes. And if they don't understand, are willing to ask people who understand to draft curriculum. Then you get the mix of top-down, bottom-up. Where you don't have that, I would say the best results you get to build alliances. Knock on the door to the teachers, knock on the door to the universities, get the experts they usually invite in to consult when they revise curriculum. Because curriculum shouldn't be written by politicians. Those should be written by experts who know about it, by the practitioners, by the teachers, by the academics, and students. I actually believe that students should be represented in reference groups for curriculum revision. So you should find the doors to open and go through to make sure that your voice goes through the door and doesn't only stay on the outside of the door. And you may need to, to connect with people that open those doors or have access to them. But I believe that they exist in many societies. Numbers count.
Yep.
Numbers count for politicians because they're votes that elect them. So put pressure on the numbers.
Thank you. Aisha, would you like to comment?
No, I think I'm just very inspired by you today, and I really hope that having people for the future of my kids, we have people like you who will be leaders in the future to make the changes for my kids. I just want to say that I'm very inspired today. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you both for coming. I wish we could be here for a much longer time, but we have another panel. We're looking forward to what the youth groups announce next Monday and to follow up with everyone here. So we'll be available for questions at the end of the session. Thank you very much.
Started. Yes, so thanks for the first panel, Catherine and the